Hi, Global Storytellers. Please meet Venchele, who's going to talk about the global goals and her vision of this world. Hi, Global Storytellers. Welcome to another episode with Talk with Clau with the beautiful Venchele here in Washington, D.C. As you know, I've spent the last couple of months traveling to Austria, South Korea, and Japan, and really picking out wonderful stories of global storytellers and people who work within global development who've made an impact within their community. And Venchele is one of the people who did so. So we're thinking of doing an episode for the upcoming United Nations General Assembly that's going to take place in New York next week, where we're going to discuss on what the global goals will look like and how we're going to be able to implement the global goals on a sustainable level. So, as a quick introduction, Venchele is not only a wonderful human being and spirit, but she also works for the Peace Corps in Washington, D.C. on public health issues. So, Venchele, I'd love for you to introduce yourself briefly and tell Global Storytellers what you're all about.
Well, thank you first of all for welcoming me for this session, and I appreciate that you thought of me to discuss these important issues. And so again, my name is Venchele Saint-Dic. I currently work in the Peace Corps headquarters in the policy department. Mm-hmm. And I also served in Senegal for the Peace Corps for 3 years as a preventative health agent. And I'm originally from Haiti, Port-au-Prince. I've lived there for 11 years. And so just based on my education experience and my living there, I've had firsthand experience just how can I say this? Like having had the experience of seeing public health challenges like firsthand, which inspired me to join the Peace Corps in the first place and to start this work and to move to DC to continue what I call my journey into this international development route.
So you made a really good point talking about the journey in the international development field, and Venchele and I spoke a bit about how I got to work for the World Bank and the United Nations, and how your really calling within the Peace Corps in Senegal brought you to the work you're doing here for the Peace Corps in DC, but also I know you're going to have a wonderful career in global international development moving forward. But just explain to me briefly on how you perceive international development professionals in DC. That's something that you would like to talk about. And what your advice to people who work in international development would be.
I think having served as a Peace Corps volunteer, I learned that international development work is not a sprint, it's a marathon, it's not an end in itself. It is a continual process. And I think the best advice that I would give to future international development professionals is to be patient with the process and to really try to soak up as much as possible during each phase, whether it be developing or implementing a program. Mm-hmm. Understand that failure is not the end of it all. That there's always lessons to be learned that you can pick up on and then choose to incorporate in your next project. And I think DC is a great place if you're interested in doing the international development work and meeting like-minded professionals. I definitely think that it's a booster to be here and to be surrounded by people who are just as passionate as you are about the field.
And that's how we met, right?
Right. That's how we met.
That's how we engaged
right.
Through an international development or global development network, and we met close to 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
And have ever since supported each other in the work that we do in our field, and also have given each other tips and advices what our specific projects need, right? So I think that's one thing that's really important as well, is that if you work in the field in global development or international development as a young or mid-career professional, is to have allies and people along the way who may have worked on different projects, but who have best practices and lessons learned that you can definitely benefit from. But Venchele, now with the United Nations General Assembly coming up and me and you being an active part in this process, we've discussed a bit the Sustainable Development Goals and the global goals. And global storytellers know that Sustainable Development Goals is closest to my heart is SDG number 2, eradicating extreme poverty and hunger. And this is my activism and my fight that I'm pushing forward. Now, I would like to know how you tie public health into a sustainable development goal. Which is the one that is closest to your heart, and what action would you like to give global storytellers along the way?
So I would say that the sustainable development goal that is closest to my heart is SDG 3, which focuses on promoting health and the well-being of marginalized populations. And one way that I've been able to apply or exercise my knowledge in public health is when I served as a Peace Corps volunteer, and I was fortunate to implement some great programs, including one involving a community library project, to increase the literacy of the population I was serving, and also building a community health hospital that would account for like the growing population of the 3 villages where I served in. And it's close. This sustainable development goal is close to my heart because it really takes a holistic approach in viewing the individual not just as individuals but as part of a greater system. And I think that when I look through the sustainable development goals and what each of them meant, I think most of them are interrelated, because how can you have people with who are healthy without building strong institutions?
Very true.
And how do you build strong institutions if you don't have leaders who are mindful of the needs that the populations you're serving are going through? And so again, I think most of these sustainable development goals are very much interrelated, but this is the one that would be closest to my heart because I have exercised my expertise in it for more than 3 years.
So for more than 3 years, but you have done very impactful work for your very young age, and I know there is much more to come. In particular, when we talk about what would you want this planet to look like by 2030, with the baseline of that's when the global goals are supposed to be implemented?
I think by 2030, I definitely think that these development goals could be met, again, if the entities that involved are fully aware of the ever-changing political and economical and environmental the environmental climate. Because again, international development work is not a stagnant process; it's dynamic, and I think we have probably experienced it through the Hurricane Irma recently. Where you had, this flood devastated the lives of many people, and then there was a wonderful response from FEMA and other agencies and outside stakeholders in order to get the help and give the assistance that these people needed at the time. But then again, this is another example of international development work in general, where you have to take into account that the environment that you live in is never going to be stable, and you have to learn to develop approaches and strategies in order to cope with these changes along the way while still providing service to those we serve.
That's wonderful. That's fantastic. Not only to understand that people like Venchele truly, and that's my nickname for her, sorry, truly understand what global development is about, and that it's not a static process, that everybody needs to be involved, and actually anybody, regardless of if you work for an international organization or not, has just as much part or takes as much part in the process without maybe even fully and truly understanding it. So I think it's just a responsibility we all carry within ourselves to make these global goals come true by 2030. My pledge, and we spoke about that, and it goes a bit in line to what you've said before as well, for the global goals and for the upcoming United Nations General Assembly is to truly put climate change on the forefront of the agenda and realize, even though we're living here in a currently very unstable but yet dynamic political system in the United States, is that we put climate change on the agenda and realize that it impacts us all, as we could see during Hurricane Irma as well, and to have enough funding available to truly try to mitigate those issues. And also that with the United Nations General Assembly coming up next week, both Venchele and I have pledges to global world leaders on how they should implement the global goals by 2030. One of my pledges was towards education, towards climate change, but also most importantly, and we had a long discussion about that, was towards women empowerment. Yet we're still finding ourselves in an age where women are just as active and an integral part in global development, but yet do not get the same chances and opportunities to truly thrive as much as they should. So my pledge and our pledge to global leaders convening at the United Nations General Assembly is to give more young women voices at the table and truly understand that we are part of the Global Leaders Program and the Global Leaders of Tomorrow. But Venchele, you also made another really good part on what your pledge for the global goals would be.
Well, my pledge is not only to empower women and to increase their voices on any discussion table, but to make sure that they are aware that their voices are pivotal in solving some of these cross-cutting challenges that we're facing right now in our society. Because let's face it, future generations are carried through the wombs of women. And I think sometimes we tend to forget that. And so this is great that we're having this discussion, because we're raising awareness of like the issues that we care about, and that our leaders need to put a little bit more emphasis on by 2030.
So I've met this girl 2 years ago, and I'm really excited to see her become one of the future global development leaders, and I'm very proud of you for as far as you have come in this journey, working both in the field but for the Peace Corps in the headquarters as well. And I wish you all the best on your journey, and I am looking forward to be implementing the global goals together with you.
Thank you for having me.
So Global Storytellers, this is it, Talk with Clau. If you want to follow what's happening during the United Nations General Assembly, go on www.un.org or anywhere on hashtag Global Goals 2030, and you're going to get live updates on how future leaders decide how the global goals are going to shape out. I'll be covering a little bit from New York and during the work I'm doing here on how certain issues around the SDGs are being discussed during the United Nations General Assembly, so follow Global Storytelling as well. And with anything, stay amazing, Global Storytellers. And anything you want to say in Haitian to your Haitian Global Storytellers out there?
For now, no. Nawapita.
Nawapita.
We'll see each other later.
Until we meet each other again.
Then.
Ciao.